or good afternoon, everybody. My name is Greg Bailey, and really excited to be here with you today. We've got quite a large crowd joining the session. I'm not sure if you see the attendees in this one or not, but I can see there's a big blast of last-minute folks that are joining us here. So one thing I'd like to do before I get kicked off is if anybody in this session could click the little raise your hand button in GoToMeeting. That way I know you can hear me and you can see my introduction. Okay, awesome. I see a few hands. Thank you. All right, so you're not going to see me live. You will see Donna live, but again, my name is Greg Bailey. I wish that I was here sitting by the pool, but I'm not. I know most of us are either working remotely from our house or, some folks are in the office, but one of these days, all of these challenges we're dealing with are going to go away, and we're going to be able to take all kinds of great vacations. Our star today is Donna Fitzgerald. We're real excited to have her. Now, she is not standing at a podium like you're seeing here, but she's in an unbelievable office, and she's really going to share her wisdom with us today. Now, when Donna presents, just know it's not a product-related thing. The event is sponsored by Tempus Resource, by ProSymmetry. Did want you to know there's a lot of people that we work with around the world in pretty much every continent, everything from banking and finance, pharmaceutical companies. We had a lot of those come in this year, a lot of manufacturing companies, a lot of groups where they've got internal auditors. So no, we are used around the world for resource management. At the end of this session, after Donna's, if anybody wants to stick around, I can do a little overview demo, but just wanted to give you a sense that Donna's experience is way beyond mine. She's been in the PPM, agile resource management space for over 20 years, spent over 10 years at Gartner as the lead PPM analyst, and Donna will give a little bit more about herself. But without further ado, we're real excited to have Donna present today. You will get a copy of the presentation after the event. I'll email it to you. And also I have some handouts. If you look in your little handout thing, I put a few little white papers in there, and I'll actually do a few more white papers as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Donna. Bear with me. All right, Donna, over to you.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming. I'm Donna Fitzgerald. As Greg said, I spent 10 years with Gartner, and he was so politically sweet to say I have 20 years. It's a lot longer than that. The reason that's pertinent is we're going to discuss sometimes as we go through, how do we really start thinking about project-based resources? I've had an opportunity to see as things have evolved over a few decades, and I think it's going to be pertinent because we got lost along the way. So let's get started here. What's our problem today? Well, I've decided as of today to call it the high cost of multi-project management. I'm not going to spend a lot of time belaboring this. The slide's here. You can read it. Task switching penalties, overwork penalties. What I found incredible, I've been pitching this, since like the second year of Gartner. And it's been a largely unsolvable problem. And I think some of it is we've never defined the source of the problem right. Just yesterday, I got a little blurb from Harvard Business Review that they'd published something called Beyond Burnout. And the premise of the article, and I encourage everyone to go to HBR, find the article, download it. You're really going to want to read it. But the premise of the article is that COVID has peeled back the covers on a lot of the stress in the workplace. And HR, God bless them, has come out and they've tried to do things. They tell people to take more yoga. They tell people to meditate. And this article basically says, yeah, no. sorry, it's not that. What is it? It starts with an unsustained workload. The second of the 6 reasons is a perceived lack of control. And the third is insufficient reward for effort. Now, take those 3 concepts and look at how we're fragmenting the work and the time of our people. So that's our problem in a nutshell. And right now, it's getting critical. It's affecting people's health. It's affecting all sorts of things. So how can we fix this? Imagine what I'm going to say today is basically a chalkboard talk. I'm going to give you some tools at a high level and say, resource capacity planning, skilled resource development. These are all tools. I'm going to order them, and then I'm going to talk about something that I think a lot of us have been missing. So let's start with resource capacity planning. Those of you who have heard me over the years have known that I have been trying to suggest that the right way to solve this problem is in the portfolio. As many of you know, I'm an ex-CFO. I will always think that way. I understand strategy execution. I'm also an ex-program manager. I know you give me something to execute, I will get it done. But bottom line, resource capacity planning is the linchpin. And for those who don't understand what a linchpin is, it's what holds the wheel on the axle. Essentially, I want to frame this is that resource capacity planning has to be done. And we'll talk about whether or not doing something in Excel is doing it. But right now, we'll say that's the starting point. You've got to know not who's available, but what their workload is and why. Because right now we're going to take a people-centered approach and less of an execution approach. So our next area is skilled resource development. Well, I'm going to contend that people need to be engaged before you even have skilled resources to develop. Now, if you look at a lot of the literature that's been coming out over time, a lot of it is talked about safety. And my original reaction to this, I have no idea how the rest of you react, but my original reaction to this was, what, are we going to issue warm, fluffy blankets or something? But it really has to do with the contract between an employee and an employer. Safety, I started my career essentially at a tiny little company called Intel, back when Andy Grove was running it. And the definition of safety that I learned at Intel was freedom to do your work without have to worry that somebody else was going to stab you in the back. Now, I hope sincerely that none of you ever have to work in a culture like that. But at Intel, if you did stab someone in the back, you got fired. That was the one rule. It wasn't allowed. So what we need to do is say to people, if you do the work, if you invest in the time, your job will develop as you develop. Because what we really want people to say is, my work motivates me. There's a lot of discussion as to whether or not people really want to work. And the truth is, though, people actually do. People enjoy work if you give them the opportunity to enjoy it, if you don't make them crazy. And that's really the message here. We have, every company has great people. They want to do a good job. We've just got to start building the architecture that aids them in doing that. Because quite selfishly, and I've got my CFO hat on now, what we want to do is we want to execute strategy. We want to raise profits. We want to be the top dog in our food chain. But we've got to come back and say we can only do that if our people are creative and are focused on what they need to do. Our next area is team development. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we leave skills, I wanted to bring up what the top 10 essential 21st century skills are. I liked this list. I didn't invent it. Changed it a little bit. I found this on the web somewhere, and I thought it was really pretty good because if you read it, and I'm hoping the rest of you respond to this the way I did, adaptability. Okay, I got to live with change. Analysis solutions. I got to be a problem solver. We recently at ProSymmetry did the 5 strengths test, and it was fascinating how many of us came out with that one of our top 5 strengths being problem solvers. That's what you want. You want people who will look at what's there and say, we can fix it, we can make it better. Collaboration is critical. Now, we'll cover entrepreneurial mindset in a little while. Resilience, self-aware, there's a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not going to go into the rest of it, but essentially these skills come out of functional, calm-centered people. Even in the midst of insanity, and all of this assumes we get people back in the workplace or we get children back in school, that kind of thing. So we get some sanity. But this is all potentially quite doable. One of my messages is, if you're pulling at your hair and going, how do I fix this? The answer is, it's actually going to be simpler than you think. People will work with you. If you build it up, not as I'm bringing change to you, but I'm enabling that we will all change for the better, I think it's a path to success. Now, our third resource is teams. And for this discussion, I need you to get rid of the agile concept of teams and fixed teams and all of that stuff that's going on. Don't misunderstand me. I've been in agile since before we called it agile, but there's a specific point I want to make here. Dynamic teams are based on the fact that when a situation arises, we can pull the best people in our organization and focus them on fixing, changing, doing whatever we need to do. There's research coming out, specifically in the HR community, that says, well, and all prognostications are always ambitious, they're golden, so take this with a grain of salt, but I've seen this trend for a long time. When we get out of this craziness, we can create a system where people can see a problem, grab 5 of their closest coworkers, and go solve it. If you think that's impossible, let me take you back to Intel when I worked there. That was part of our management objectives, management by objectives, and the system worked incredibly well. Now, did we get that all done in 40 hours? No. My boss thought 65 hours was a good work week. I am not trying to bring all of that stuff back. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But I've seen the power of dynamic teams. We've also lost the concept of teams, specifically in IT. We've gone to a lot of task assignments. For those of you who used to be project managers with a team that reported to you, you could change the world with the power of those people. And I want us to really viscerally remember that feeling. remember how it used to be when somebody'd walk into your office and tell you they just solved the technical problem that was going to cause your entire project to crash to the ground. I hope everyone's experienced that. I certainly have. And it was the human being and that did that, and the power of the team. Somebody you wouldn't expect it suggested something. We've lost that, and it's something that we need to come back to. Again, we started talking about burnout. Burnout is when you are doing assembly line work. For those of you who are in Agile and people are pulling things off of the backlog, do they really know what they're building, or are they just doing work? Human beings have to, if you know the old story, none of us want to lay bricks. None of us necessarily want to build a wall. What we're talking about is building the cathedral. So our last area is really an agile organization. And this is something I've been talking about for a long time. For the corporation to be agile, people have to be agile. And there's been tremendous academic research on what we call an entrepreneurial orientation. And it turns out there are 5 factors that contribute to it. And the first one is autonomy. Individuals need the opportunity to see when something's wrong, something can be better. They need to know that they can go look at it and that they're not told to just keep their nose to a specific grindstone. Another, strangely enough, and this was not intuitively obvious to me, is competitiveness. Just part of the human psyche. If you don't want to do something and maybe have a little light shine on you, you might just tend to not make the effort. Now, the third is risk-taking. It's highly possible that your company does not encourage risk-taking. Again, stories back to Intel, but if you want to build a dynamic, aggressive culture that was at one time, not today, but was at one time number one in the industry, you've got to let people take risks. We were told to set our objectives, and if we met our objectives every quarter, we were probably sandbagging and we might get fired. If we made 70% of what we hoped to do, management technically said it was about right. We all thought it was really 85. But the fact that you can learn to fail fast, learn to go back, learn to move, and that you structure things so that you haven't failed totally is an attitude we want to encourage not only in our project teams, but everywhere. We also want to encourage this in ourselves. Because if you're looking at taking a lead in solving the problems that I'm actually discussing, that's a risk. You know, if you really want security, you may go for the easy path. And to really get the payback, you might have to go a little further out of your comfort zone. The other 2 factors are innovativeness and proactiveness. Those 5 factors get you someone who is willing to go out and take the initiative to make a change. And if we want agile corporations, this is what we want all of our employees to be. Now, there's a hint here. For years, I've been saying to people, no one can tell you what to think in the privacy of your own office. That never seemed to resonate with anybody. So let me reframe this. You can nudge change. And the way you nudge change is by being informed. every one of us, by virtue of our jobs, knows a lot of things. We know a lot of people. Most project managers or people who are ex-project managers got really, really good about having an ear in their company, of hearing things, of, back when we had lunchrooms, my God, we could actually meet people for lunch and find out different things. All that information, what you read, what you hear, what you observe, allows you to influence management. I've always suggested that, let's say, and we'll talk about the sea of red on our capacity chart in a moment, but when you see something about a project, you see it's behind or you see it's in trouble, start asking, should we cancel this? Is this most important? Do we have the right people on it? It doesn't matter what you look at. If you find out that the situation doesn't seem to jive with what you think the objectives are, you can just ask a simple question of your senior manager of, I don't know if this is the right thing. If we really want to accomplish this, we might move someone from here to there. We might scale this back. We might not start all these projects. You don't have to push it. You can just hint. You can just provide very graciously information that will inform better decisions. I've told, now remember, portfolio is very important to me. I've talked to heads of PMO who own the portfolio, excuse me, and I said, when you've pulled the portfolio together, do you have a fairly good idea of what your senior management will prioritize and in what order? And people just stare at me like, that's not my job. Well, the answer is, yeah, it actually is. Because if you don't know someone close, then you don't know what their strategy is. You don't know what's important to them. And if you don't know that, you can't operate in a dialogue. And that's essentially what Nudge is. So for those of you who don't know, there's a book called Nudge. Not necessarily telling you to run right out and buy the book, especially since there's a little digest of the book that's available in Kindle format for people who have Kindle Unlimited for free. So you might want to take a look at it. But I think I've basically explained what I hoped you could get. You are in a position of power. You are in a position of influence. If we are going to change these things that are hurting people, they're burning them out, it's making them crazy, we have to do something, then we need to sort of start thinking about what we should be doing. Because change only happens when good people start working on it. So there are 5 levers that we can turn. Strategy execution has always been my favorite. Yes, 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 because it's program management. Yes, because it's got to get something done. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, today we're going to talk about technology. And you go, oh, wait a minute, Donna, this is not supposed to be a tools conversation. It's not. I want to give you a little bit of frame of reference of why I want to talk about technology. Technology structures things. Technology makes things easier, one hopes. And if it doesn't make it easier, that's not technology you want. Technology should work with you. This is all the goal. And it's important that you look at technology as a partner. as something that will hold a structure and hold process so that you don't have to be everywhere all the time trying to get people to do things the way you want. The tool can do that. So for those of you who've been Gartner clients, I invented this back when I was at Gartner, and I like it, so I keep it around. This is part of the maturity model that I've been working on. And we've got 5 levels, not because I'm ever advocating you could get to level 2 and stay there. That is not what this is. If I could make CMM never have existed, I would. Level 2 is not sufficient. Level 2 is a place. When you think of level 2, think of the baby crawling. You want the child to walk, to run. We don't want the baby just to crawl. And the point of a maturity model, when I did it back at Gartner, I said, I don't want to do that. First assignment I got when I joined the company. I said, I don't want to do that. I hate maturity models. They're stupid. And they said, so go write something that's not stupid. I loved that. They were so smart. They knew what to say to me. So I went off and I wrote something that at least I didn't think was stupid. And that's what I'm hoping I'm doing here. This is not anything you're assessed about. This is a plan that says, take a deep breath. You don't have to do it all at once. In fact, it's categorically impossible to do it all at once. You want to make plans that say, I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this. And essentially, that's what the levels are. So let's talk about level 1. I call this Excel rules. My heart just breaks when I see this. I have gone into so many organizations and sat there with staff in the PMO and looked at the spreadsheets, and my brain has hurt. So any of you that have to do this, oh my God, my hat's off to you. It's got to be so difficult and so crazy. And you know what? Primary driver for making a change, it just freaking doesn't scale. You can't see a big enough picture for long enough. It keeps you chained to this short-term panic crisis. Now, I've always believed this, but I was running one day through bizarre circumstances. I ended up as the, quote, general manager of a development center. We're a consulting company. And I got sucked back into Excel, and I got sucked back into the Monday morning meeting of who should do what because clients changed their mind and where delays in projects were good because you could shove other work in. And I did that for about 6 or 8 weeks, and then I realized, oh my God, this is a mistake. So there's no holier than thou coming from me. I understand that this is common, but and I do know we could tell you the story of somebody who had 2,000 resource managers working in Excel. I give my hats off to him. It scales in that sense, but you will never, ever, ever, ever get the answer you need. You might be able to say who looks like they're free, but this is, and I love Excel, but this is the evil. This is why people are feeling what they're feeling. So if we agree with that for a moment, let's talk about Fred. Okay, Fred is a resource. He gets in his little car and he drives to work. And he knows there's a lot of stuff going on. And, you know, we need something to get it all organized. But, you know, basically he feels pretty good. So he gets in his car and gets to the office. And proverbially, that's what his office looks like. there's all these things moving, and he's sort of sitting there going, yeah, how do I get anything done? We need to not only get people in a demand management tool that supports resource assignments. And remember, the reason we're talking about a tool is because, honestly, Excel doesn't scale. And that's hard facts, so we need something. I'm not telling you what tool to buy. I can make a suggestion, but I'm just saying you need a tool. Because you've got to figure out how to start unraveling this. But even at this stage, things can be a little crazy. I looked at this cartoon, and it just made my head spin, because all this motion. But that's really what I think it feels like for most people. Now, how can we help management start to not try to start? I was on the phone with a company where they have 65 open projects for 35 people. Honest to God, not the first time I've heard that, and it won't be the last. Now, clearly, that's impossible. Can't do it, never going to happen. Something's always going to be late. Something never gets done. So let's start at the very, very basic level and see if we can start to get management to agree how much they want to invest in certain classes of work. So keep the lights on. One of the things I've learned after 20 years of doing this is that you want to get those people that, literally run the data center, they do whatever the heck, but they have a day job, they do the same thing every day, and they keep the lights on. Get them out of the numbers. They should never be any place that anybody can see them without clearly saying these people are not assignable. Now we get run the business, and Gartner has said that and this is for IT, about 70% of the efforts have been going into run the business. I'm going to take that 70 down to 60 because the keep the lights on people we know about. And that to fund the level of development we need for the future, we're going to have to drop that 60 to 40. Today, if you went to your management and asked them what they wanted to do, if they come back with 10, 60, 20, and 10, that's great. At least somewhere you have hard agreements. So for change the business, and when you see percent, don't think money, think people. Because really, people are the new money. Money's cheap. I mean, as hysterical as that sounds, money is cheap in today's world. It's trained, capable people who are actually the bottleneck. What's important? So if you could get one single point of we will not exceed, something simple, and I presented this to boards of directors, and I was amazed, when I put it there, and I said, for this strategy, which is how I had done it, do you want that to be 25% of what you're investing, or do you want it to be 35% of what they invest? They actually could answer those questions. They needed some discussion, and but they could get that premise. So what you want is the simplest model that somebody will agree to. And again, that's why we're talking about this in terms of maturity. You can refine it from there. But at least you've got a limit. So 20% of your staff who can do the work required in change the business. level 3 is where we're talking about executing strategy. And it's important to say here, this is the message. I'm not expecting anybody, if you're back at level 2, great, do level 2. You can't get ahead of yourself. Here, from a tool perspective, and this is important, you want a fully integrated resource management, portfolio management tool, because fundamentally, you've got to tie resource capacity to the portfolio. So and I tell these Intel tales because, guys, this was the 1980s. Won't say how early in the 80s, we'll just say 80s. One of the reasons Intel was so successful was we tracked resource assignments to projects all the time. We had a full-time resource manager who kept this updated. I reported on it in the financial. What were we investing? What were we getting? So the key message is here, we lost this. This is not new. I want you to understand that you're not trotting ground that no one's been through. What happened was the complexity, organizations got so large that you had to have a tool. All we had was a spreadsheet, but we had a different perspective. We were smaller, we could do it. For larger organizations, you really have to have that link between the portfolio and the resource management system. You've got to start sequencing work. If you go to our website and you look up white papers, you can find a white paper called Increasing the Agility of Your Strategic Portfolio Management Approach in 3 steps. That will take you through how to do it. So I'm not going to belabor that here. I'm just going to say that you've got to sequence the work, because management's going to keep saying, are we there yet? When do I get something accomplished? You need to almost start thinking in terms of roadmaps, and for a highly PPM audience, this is all about programs, guys. We know this like the back of our hand, but we've lost that vision. So we've got to start looking at it. We also have to remember, and here's where we get to agile, no plan survives the encounter with the enemy. If I lay out, I should do this, 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 it's going to change. And it's okay we don't do everything, and we only want to do as much of something as actually creates the business value. Jim Highsmith, who was one of the signers of the Agile Manifesto and a good friend of mine, tells the story of helping a client implement CRM. They broke it into 3 phases. After the first phase was done, which just happened to be lead tracking, the CEO came to Jim and said, you know what? I got 80% of my value. I really, at this moment, don't need to go any further. Think about that for a while. All we have to do is deliver the value. We're still lugging around that monstrosity of a requirements document. It was always wrong because it led, well, Agile will tell you 43% of requirements were either unnecessary or actively harmful. We want what delivers value, and that's what you start doing at level 3. but you need the pieces where you can get them. You cannot do this if the portfolio is unlinked from resources. Okay. So one of the things, and I love this, you can now do what-if modeling. So instead of doing long, laborious, manual stuff, the tool can do it. Now, I love this chart because it says there's a whole lot of red out of there. Red is bad. Red at the beginning equals too many projects competing for the same resource. If you see red, you gotta fix it. You've got to make sure that what you're approving is adequately resourced. I know it's common sense. Mostly, and I'll tell you the secret, you use a tool like this to show that you can move some of that red further out, because this will do what-if scenario. And if you resource it correctly, i.e., you resource it saying that you've either got a dedicated staff or you've got just resources split between two, you can get it done faster. Our research back at Gartner said you ought to be able, just doing the most basic stuff, pick up your productivity about 20%. No one's ever believed it because IT has trained them to believe they're not. If they don't start in January, they're not going to get anything. Well, we've got to grow up and get beyond that. So we've now got a tool. We've now got something visual we could stick in front of them and say, not going to work. And everyone that's bright red that you see there, that's hurting somebody. That's really, frankly, burning them out. Look at that red as burnout squared, because that's really fundamentally what we're talking about. And then, again, finance person in me, it's not getting the work done. And that makes me even crazier. I'd rather do less and get it done as long as I've clearly prioritized what's going to turn the dial. Now, at level 4, we've got the basics done. We're pretty good. So now we're going to get into skills and competencies. And we're going to talk about learning. I was really lucky at one point in time. I actually was responsible for the learning programs for 1,500 project managers. And it was a great assignment. I absolutely loved it because I got to see how people learn. And guess what? They don't learn from textbooks. They don't learn from the way corporate education does things. One of the things Oracle Consulting did right was they had their own learning center. They learn through tacit knowledge. We know we've got, as a society, we know we've got to start addressing these issues. We need to start, micro-credentialing. We need to start continuous lifelong learning. You read it everywhere, but no one ever talks about how we put it into practice. And if you think HR is going to give you what you want, no. They don't understand. And by the way, I am speaking at an HR, I'm speaking to an HR community on Monday, talking about a new paradigm for strategic workforce planning for Human Capital Institute. They live in corporate. They don't live out in the trenches. If we want this to work, we need to drive it. We are the only ones, and I have proven this to myself based on all the work I did back at Oracle. We're the only ones who know. So I inherited this horrendously awful class of 5, was the course material for a 5-day Welcome to Intel Project Management. Not Intel, Oracle Project Management. The material just was horrendous. So I asked my 2 best people as trainers to come in and pretend to teach from the material. The class got 5 stars. Why? Because John and Ann knew so much about how to do the work, and the tacit knowledge shared was tremendous. Now, none of the people in the course, of course, were newbies, and you do different things with brand new people. But there's so much we can do when we start thinking about it organically. Part of how we structure at level 4 is getting the right people to the right work. So if I want to learn something about a new area, I should be able to ask for an assignment in my new chosen skill area. I should be able to have an opportunity to work with someone who can mentor me. With a tool, we can do that. We can do it without the tool, and many of you are very good managers, and you've made these opportunities for your people, and you're doing it today, but it takes a lot of time, and you're not the standard. A lot of people don't have time and don't know how to do it. So what we want to do is level the playing field and make this available to more people. So this is skills. This is a skill matrix. So green is it's a good skill, orange is it's a medium skill, and red is the skill doesn't exist. So we want to solve what I call the 3R, right people, right skills, right work, by reducing that sea of red. So there it is. There is your learning plan right in front of you. You don't have to worry about it. You got to implement it. You got to do the work, but it's right in front of you. Level 5. Now, quick thing about level 5. Level 5 bifurcates. It only exists in 2 areas. It either you get level 4 done and you realize your business is changing, you jump the S curve, which means you start changing your business to a new business model and go up from there. Or you have the very unique set of circumstances, good to great, all the books that talk about the best companies. Level 5 is the right management structure, the right product, the right market at the right time. It's going to exist between 5 and 8 years for some companies, but it does exist. You may be lucky enough to work in one. What happens at level 5 is, we hope, because this is all fantasy, that we're going to start going from descriptive analytics to prescriptive analytics. And the goal of prescriptive analytics, and that is kind of a dicey term, but it starts to say, just don't do that. Rather than leaving that sea of red, it says, just don't do that. You're going to lose money. You're going to lose time if you do that. So it's really, the view is it's really bringing the power of AI, and more importantly, the power of data in to help us make decisions. If any of us live to see that, we'll see. But I think it's worth knowing that it is something that's possible. So here's the bottom line message that I hope has come across. I realized years ago that a tool can do something that I call hold center. So a tool gives you a framework, a structure for you to support all the people who are under your care in a manner that doesn't work you to death. You don't have to struggle. Do you have to work? Yes. But it's so hard for a human being to do this without the external structure. So with that, we ran the full hour. My apologies for the technical problems, but I strongly say now is the time to pick a tool. I think ProSymmetry would be lovely. That's how I first came to see it, but thank you all for listening.
That was awesome, Donna. I'd like to just see if anyone on the line had any questions for Donna. I don't think I can unmute your session, but if you wanted to put him into the Q&A tab, we've got 2 minutes left for Donna. And also, just want to let you know, I will email you a copy of her presentation. We also have a white paper very soon coming out that's very detailed, and I'll answer all those other questions in the box. The other thing is that we do have some webcasts coming up that are very product specific. I'll also send you links for that registration. And if any of you on this line are interested to see anything right away, feel free to send me an email and we'll get something coordinated. So let me just do a quick look here just to see if there's any more questions that anybody has for Donna. Nope, I think I answered them all in the box. So with that, I hope. Yep.
Well, Greg, one thing, let me say, anyone who doesn't have time to ask questions now, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. We can set up a phone conversation, anything you want, anything I can do to help, no matter what your circumstances are. Please reach out. I mean, that's what I'm here for. And I thank ProSymmetry for giving me the luxury of being a resource to the community. So there's my email. You can either email me directly or connect on LinkedIn. And anyone who knows me knows that's 100% sincere offer. And no, I will not turn you over to Greg. I promise you, you have to ask for that.
And let me tell you, when she was at Gartner, companies paid big money to try and get a hold and talk to Donna. So she, she's definitely serious about that. Well, everybody have a wonderful day. We thank you for attending, and we look forward to working with you or helping you out in the future. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.